Dani. So, from your experiences, you've seen so many firms, capacity planners, you've seen heaps of pain that firm owners have shared. And sometimes the answer was an admin. It sounds like they're calling out for an accountant, but sometimes it's an admin. Yeah, can you share, maybe like an example of it, and then like, what happened afterwards? Was it actually the answer to that person's problems?
Yeah, so we've found a lot of firms do mistake that. So they do go for accountants thinking that that will solve everything, but they're still sitting there answering emails. I've had firm owners say that they've started work at like 3, 4 a.m. just to keep on top of their thousands of emails that have come through. Not realize, like it's interesting that they don't actually realize that having an admin will solve all of that. Um, Another thing is, I think there are some firms who have like a joint email. So everyone, and some people have this here, I'm sure, but yeah, everyone has access to this one email address, which is fine. But sometimes it's a little bit confusing because basically you're not sure who's supposed to be answering what. So if you do have an admin assistant who's dedicated to that, like to at least filtering through the emails and then going, okay, well, this one can go here, that one can go there, it does make a huge difference.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, does that sort of answer that, Thomas?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I hear that one quite a fair bit. Having a shared inbox and then putting an admin there to be able to man it and then look after it. And just to dig into that one a little bit, Danny, why do firms do that? Why do they share this inbox and then they put an accountant to look after that? Why what was it? Just so to help everyone in the room sort of maybe spot out some sort of bias that they have towards thinking about this. What did they how did they need to think to be able to realize that this needs to be an admin doing it? I can't just dump it all on an accountant.
Yeah, I think, well, just to answer the first thing, I think it's got to do with, I guess, control, because they're afraid that other people can't handle what they need to handle, if that makes sense. It's what Jamie says about delegating. Some people are too afraid to delegate. So they think that if they can view every single email that comes through, then they'll be able to handle everything. But in reality, that's not the case. And what you're actually doing is making things much worse on yourself. You should be like training your staff to be able to handle it so that you don't have to be, I guess, working in quad one. You'd focus on quad two. And then, sorry, what was your second question, Thomas, about?
I actually wanted to follow on from a point that you made there. That's pretty
Yeah.
interesting because that reminds me of how a lot of owners would say, well, I can't make an admin do that job because they're not an accountant. Like they're not able to, how would they be able to go follow up the information? They're not an accountant. And you mentioned training as a pretty important thing. But how about in, say, like the screening process? Like what should we do to be able to filter out for like the right admin? Or what signs should we look for in order to tell if this admin will be able to do these administrative tasks that we wrongly assume that only an accountant can do?
So there's a few different things. What we personally do is the very first thing is we'll actually test our candidates in this particular role. I know generally we leave the testing to the last stage for accountants and bookkeepers, but for admin, we give them the tests up front. So we want to test them on communication, attention to detail is a huge one, and problem solving. But then the other thing that we do is generally we send reminders out to our candidates before, like maybe 10 minutes before the interview or half an hour before the interview, um, to remind them to actually join. We don't do that with admins
Hmm.
because we want to make sure that they're on the ball, that they know what time they're supposed to be there, they'll actually be there on time and all of that. Yeah, so that's a huge one. just testing those little things to see how quickly they respond to you as well. Are they going to take a while to respond, or are they onto it? Because that will make a huge difference when they're actually working for you.
That is so insightful, being able to use the actual interview process in addition to a test to actually see if they're the right candidate as well. Because how would they be able to be on it and chase clients for signatures and payments or invoices or bookings if they don't even respond to an email for a job that they're applying for? It's pretty wild. Have you actually ever seen have you seen examples of where admins have dropped the ball on this? And what were the signs that, what were the red flags? We talk a lot about green flags, but what were some red flags that we shouldn't ignore when hiring an admin?
Yeah, so one is definitely the response time. So if and Chris can back me up on this, like if they're not responding to us at all, but also just the communication. So in their career history form, you'll see it with their writing. So one, if they say refer to resume instead of actually giving us the information that we need, that's huge, because that to me just means that they're lazy. Like I'll look at that and I'm like, well, if you can't even fill out a 5-minute thing and give us the information that we need, what are you going to do with our clients? But yeah, but even grammar, spelling mistake, especially now with Chat GPT, like if you really needed to, just pop it in Chat GPT and ask it to help you out. Yeah. And if they can't do that, if they can't think about that sort of stuff or think outside the box, that's a big red flag.
That's huge, right? Being resourceful, being able to uh, look around them and see what tools that they can use. And I guess it also implies that they're self-aware enough to be able to go and seek those tools out and use it at the right time. We can appreciate that an admin they have to do lots of different things. They have like a 5-minute task here, a 15-minute task there. They rarely have a time where they can just lock in for a few hours on a large piece of work and just put their music on and then just focus on it like an accountant can. They're pretty much always alert and uh, thanks, Dani, for those green flags and red flags that you shared there and how you filter out for them.